Hi, everybody. Joel Ledlow, Evolution Martial Arts, joined by Ian today, and he has uh, asked that we cover some information. He and I talk about a lot of stuff, and something he wanted to bring up for everybody else is the Tao of Jeet Kune Do.
Sort of. Something in it.
Sort of. We're more specifically talking about the 6 diseases, and I'm gonna I will say, so I have a couple of copies of the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. I don't actually remember sitting down and ever reading it from cover to cover. I have looked in it and looking here and look there and all that, but specifically I was talking with Jerry Poteet, and we were going through some stuff, and I'd asked a question. No, I am not going to tell you the question.
You're just gonna leave us
And
hanging like that?
I might. Actually, I was talking about, well, bring me back to that.
Okay.
So he said, okay, well, look at the 6 diseases. And I was like, what do you mean, look at the 6 diseases? And he goes, yeah, go look in the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, look in the 6 diseases. So I then go home and realize that my copy has been borrowed by my buddy Ben. And I'm like, shit, I don't have it. So then I go to the bookstore and I'm looking for it, and they're out. And then I end up getting something else and I didn't have it. And anyway, I finally got to it, and I got to the six diseases, and I will share those with you, and then we'll kind of go through them and just sort of chat about them. So number one, the desire for victory. 2, the desire to resort to technical cunning. 3, the desire to display all that has been learned. 4, the desire to awe the enemy. 5, the desire to play the passive role. 6, the desire to get rid of whatever disease one is affected by.
It's
Yeah,
like,
Bruce was all into this philosophy, crazy shit. So he liked stuff like this a lot.
yeah, that's like hella paradoxical in almost every way. And, just coming into it,
Absolutely.
it,
Don't think about pink elephants.
right.
You
And
know,
then you think about pink
it's kind of one
elephants.
of those.
Right.
So here's a question for everybody. Drop in the comments. Drop in the comments. Don't cheat. Don't look in the comments. Which disease, before I reveal or I don't reveal, which disease do you think I had to go look up? Ian, give it a moment. Pause and go put down which of those 6 diseases you think I was. I guess don't pause. After I tell you this, pause before Ian answers and then go. All right. So which one, two, three, four, 5, or 6 did Jerry Poteet send me off to go look up, and which one do you think that I had? Which disease do you think I was falling victim to? Again, number 1, the desire for victory. Number 2, the desire to resort to technical cunning. 3, the desire to display all that has been learned. 4, the desire to awe the enemy. 5, the desire to play the passive role. 6, the desire to get rid of whatever disease one is affected by. So go down the comments, put down which one. You just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Up to you. If you put 7, you're quacked out of your mind. And then you can come back, and Ian's going to give his guess on it.
If I had to guess, I would say the last one.
Wrong. I'll tell you the story and see if you can guess it afterwards. We know it's not number 6. So I was training with Jerry Poteet at his place, and when I came in fairly high level. I was already a black belt with Ed. I'd been training with at a very high level with several other world level martial artists, and I was bouncing. I was working. I had great training partners. I was working to everybody. It was my jam at the time. But I came in. I was really training with Jerry, and we started getting into some higher level stuff. And I was like, so nobody's taught this? Like, when do you show this stuff? There was stuff we were going through that literally you don't see JKD people still don't do it because quote unquote high level stuff, they're doing beginner level stuff for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, when do I know? So, Ian, I'm teaching you. When do I teach you stuff? And that was kind of my thing. So he said, this is your disease. Go look it up. And I was like, shit, I gotta go look it up. It took me like 2 days to figure out which disease it was. So do you know which disease it is now?
Well, I mean, that could be so many. Like it could be all of them because all right, I'll just take a guess for the sake of playing it, but the technical one.
Was that number two?
I think that's number 2. The desire
Number
to
No, no. Oh, technical cunning is number two. Nope, that was not me.
I guess I don't know you as well as I thought.
Mine was number three. The desire to display all that has been learned. Still probably my disease because I'm like, I know, I know a lot of stuff, and I want to take people there, but the thing is, most people aren't ready for it.
Well, this is actually why I'm glad that we're talking about it because when I read that as in this as being a disease, like I was thinking of this is what you take into an adversarial position. But what does this apply
It
to?
can be. Mine was specifically to teaching, but it could also be in there. I remember one of my teachers, Kimco, was kickboxing, sort of like what Joe Louis and Chuck Norris and Bob Wallace, what those guys were doing.
Yeah.
Kimco was doing that in the 80s.
That's the guy from Hawaii, right?
I was, yeah, he's in Hawaii now.
Okay, yeah.
And uh, really phenomenal martial artist, great person, great mentor. And he said when he was fighting, he said, if I could fight somebody and beat them with a jab, I didn't do anything else because I didn't want to show off any other moves that I had because there was somebody in the audience watching who I was going to have to fight later.
Right.
I didn't want them to see everything that I had. So he was really talking about strategizing in a sport martial art world,
Didn't you
but
have that
still not wanting to show all the cards that you have.
didn't you have that conversation with Steven and I as well, you know? Because I don't remember
Probably.
what the conversation was, but you had told both of us, they were like, okay, well, I I don't remember who said it, but you were like, well, since you're so much better than everybody, why don't you beat everyone in sparring with just your jab?
Oh, that actually came from another guy who similarly was in Tang Soo Do as well and had a great outlook and had talked about sparring with a jab. And he had been as an instructor, and this was in my younger days. And the guy was just a really great guy. I mean, I can picture him. I cannot remember his name for the life of me right now, but really pleasant, wonderful person. And we just had great conversations. Um, outside of a training floor.
Mm-hmm.
But he was telling me about how as a senior instructor, he was going to get somebody who was getting a bit. He said, "Okay, well, you're just going to use a jab," or he said, "I'm just going to." I think he said, "I'm just going to use a jab, and you can use whatever." And I said, "Okay." And I think he may have had them because I think this is what I did to you.
Yeah.
Was I said, "Okay, I'm going to use whatever. You're going to use just a jab." And I'm doing, straight punches, round punches, kicks, and you're doing just a jab to the face. Okay, we switch. We're going to use whatever. I'm going to use a jab. While I'm changing leads, I'm doing low jab, I'm doing high jab, I'm doing a jab to your thigh, to, moving over and really applying just a straight lead um, in a multitude of ways and really showing the diversification. And that was the idea was you're not just locked into one small little thing.
Right.
Just because it says it's a jab doesn't mean that, well, how many flavors of jab do you have?
Right.
I've got a lot of flavors of jab. And that's really it's also a little bit of a lesson for someone who starts to come up, and you kind of get, we all do it. I did it. You did it. We all get to that point where we kind of think we know something. And it's one of those trick lessons to kind of make an up and coming martial artist start to think about what they have. Oh shit, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I need to, whoa, I just got my ass handed to me with a jab because I had locked myself into a mental box. That's kind of the idea with that one, is to really be thinking about how can you expand your horizons? How can you continue to grow?
Right.
If you look at, I talk about this example quite often with a judoka, with a, you get a high level judo black belt. They really, maybe this is what I've been shared, people have shared with me, a really high level person, yes, they know a whole lot of throws, but they're like go to maybe five. They got their primary, then they'll have two secondaries, and then maybe two others that they're pretty slick at. But that first one, or maybe even the second one, it's really about whatever, it's a hip throw, it's a shoulder throw, it's a scarf throw, whatever kind of throw it is. The difference is they can throw it in kind of every which way but loose. They're, we're going to go right, I can throw it. You want to go left, I can throw it. We're going up, we're going down, we're spinning this way, we're spinning that way. I'm on my knees, you're on your knees. We're going towards you, we're going towards me. Doesn't make any difference. They go in a 360 and they learn how to apply and change the circumstances to fit into the throw.
Right.
So they're manipulating the given environment, those environmental norms or circumstances, so that it fits into, oh, there goes my throw. Same thing with, hey, I need to do just a jab. Well, I'm going to change so that I can move this, it's like shooting a gun. Well, can you only shoot a gun with by holding it in this one position? No, you can move around. It still fires the same way, but you're just moving it. And it's the same idea with that particular drill of coming up into it.
Right.
No, which disease would that fall into? That would be, well, that kind of runs into, it's a teaching note, so I'm not sure there, but um you could run into, it's kind of funny because as a teacher, I would say I'm running that particular drill of doing it to a junior martial artist, um, whether it's a high level student or a junior instructor to you, or you're a senior student and they're a more junior
Mm.
student. Like a second degree black belt doing it to a first degree black belt kind of idea.
So I ha-
That could that could run into two or three or four,
so
not five though.
in regards to that, I'm actually curious as to like what each of these mean to you. And my second question is, what are the consequences of these? Why are these bad? Why are these things that like affect somebody in a negative way?
Okay, I think the first one with any philosophy, and that's what I would put this is as just a philosophy, is to get you thinking.
Right.
So sort of answering those in reverse order. The first, there's not really a negative, it's to have you be considering.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you're not becoming overly fixated on something. You don't want to be, so I always talk about traps. There's traps in everything. There can be physical traps if you're doing a drill, if you're sparring. There can also be mental traps. And I think what this is trying to do is really help you avoid some of those mental traps, or at least so you don't dig a hole so deep that you're just in way over your head.
Right.
We're not perfect. We're gonna be here, we're gonna be there, but overall we're trying to avoid excessive behavior or thought processes. Um, okay, so going back to your first question, what do these mean to me? I don't know that I've actually gone through these in a while and really thought about them. And I would challenge everybody. if you read any philosophies, whether you're reading something out of the Tao, Jeet Kune Do, or you're reading something like the Book of Five Rings or whatever, and there's a lot of really great stuff out there. If you found something to be very impactful and thought provoking on you at some point in your life, I would challenge you to go back and read it again at some time later. It's like reading a fiction book. You know, you might read uh, a work of fiction and you're 15 and you identify with one character, or you identify with a character at this particular point in the story, but then you come back at 25 and it's a whole different story because you have a different life experience and you're seeing something different because you're relating to characters differently. The same is true with philosophy. You're going to come back to it with that life experience, whatever that is for you, and just examine things from a massively different perspective because of that wealth of knowledge and experience that you're going to have. So, yeah, let's revisit this. Let's see what the heck and by no, this is my personal thoughts. You don't think of it as being your thoughts. So if you're listening, you're like, that Joel guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Yeah, your perspective is going to be different. And those words are supposed to be thought provoking. And if your thoughts are provoked, drink your tea, provoked in a different way, then, fuck off. No,
Oh,
I'm
fair.
kidding. I'm kidding. If your thoughts are provoked in a different way, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's part of the whole journey. When you look at a painting, you read some philosophy, you hear some music, you eat some food, it's going to be a different experience for different people at different points, in their life or in their day.
Right.
So if you eat something early in the morning, it might not be the same as eating it in the evening. If you listen to a piece of music and you're pissed off, it's going to resonate with you in a different way than if you're really giddy happy. It might, if it's like, it might really just there's music for that,
Right.
a whole lot of it.
Likewise, you don't want to
We
listen
all
to that in the
listen,
morning. You're going to be like, what is this?
maybe.
I mean,
All right. So number one, the desire for victory. Uh, I think for me, the one that I've already really gone on with this one is not looking to be better. We always go into who's going to be better. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. And I tell this to my students a lot. I say, hey, when you're in class and we're doing a movement, I used to go and see if we're doing something and we're doing footwork and Ian's better at footwork than I am. I'm going to go with Ian and I'm going to follow him and I'm going to, have my own little mental competition against Ian because he's better at footwork and I'm not going to beat him, but I am going to get better. And the desire for victory shifts your focus from the process to the end result. And if you're in that moment, if you're really living moment to moment, you're not thinking about the end result. You are just fully invested in the moment into whatever is going to happen. Philosophically, that's a bit of a challenge to get your head wrapped around. And I think in actuality, it is far more difficult to get yourself actually to do. I haven't been in that one. I would say that's a life or death kind of situation where you're just fully invested in the moment. I'm not thinking about like what's the end result. I'm just here.
right.
Um,
I also think that,
so if you're
oh, I was just going to
go
say, I
ahead.
also think that for this one in particular, it can be a good idea to take the time to think about what victory means to the individual and in what context. You know, what does it
Yeah.
mean to
Are you
win
looking at are you looking at scoring a point or are you looking at achieving a goal?
or defeating something
And
or,
and are
adversity or,
you
yeah,
if you're training, I mean, as martial artists, well, that's a different thing. In As martial artists, we tend to put ourselves into the life or death situation mentality. I've got to win. I've got to do this. And I think to some degree, sport is a negative influence on that thought process in pushing us into it a bit
mm-hmm,
more. And so I would caution people to be aware of it, maybe, that your desire for victory is really not most of our focus. 99.9% of our focus as a martial artist is on cultivation. How do we develop our skill sets? How do we cultivate ourselves into being a better athlete and a more skilled combatant?
Right.
That should be the desire or the focus for your training. And when you're in a real competitive kind of setting, then you're just in the moment. And whatever your skill set is will rise to the top.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, sometimes as a competitor, and that is the good thing about sport, if you have the right mindset, I think, with sport. And I wrestled and I played football, um, both very quite physical. And I've done sport. I never competed with kickboxing or some of the other grappling arts later, but I did practice with that with people. So it was basically, I did competition without going outside of the school, because I
Right.
just did it with my
With
friends in
people that
class.
that were coming up. Yeah. And I think,
And I was just going to finish that thought a little bit.
yeah, sorry.
If you're letting yourself go in a sports situation where, hey, you know what, I can put it all on the line and someone's going to pull me off if I lose my shit and I go bonkers, or if somebody gets hurt, somebody's going to jump in. We have some restraints in here. We have some protocols to keep us safe. So I can really kind of cut loose and see what my skill set really is. So you and I are going against each other. Hey, I can figure it out. And I don't have to worry about win or loss because I'm not going to be dead at the end of it.
Right.
Um, and in that case, it is a very good thing. I think if you can find that really good, win or lose, we're all winners. It sounds like a bunch of horse shit, but unless you're betting on an outcome, then that is the truth. If you get better, if I compete against someone else and I lose, but I get better, then I got better. So the desire for victory, and I think you've had another really good point. What does that mean?
Yeah. What is a
What are you
W for
looking
you?
for?
Right.
Yeah, a W is I got better. So you and I train, and you like punch me a whole bunch of times, you tap me out, you restrain me, you throw me, whatever it is that you were doing, but I got better and you didn't,
Right.
then who won? Well, we count up a bunch of punches and stuff. Person A wins. If we estimate who improved the most, will person B win? So what is your perspective on that?
Right.
Number two, the desire to resort to technical cunning. I think that one for me, I didn't really run into it as much. I was like, when I was a wrestler, I was what's called a garbage wrestler. I was not a technical wrestler. A garbage wrestler is kind of flopping around, going by feel, and shit just happens, and
Yeah.
they sort of take advantage of it. Sounds like aliveness to me. And I ran to that normally already. That was my inclination. And I think when I was doing all the stuff later, when I got to kind of the level where I knew punches and kicks well enough to kind of like just go, we had gear and I was with friends and we were punching and kicking. I got punched and kicked just as much as they did, sometimes more, sometimes less. But we were just going, and it wasn't technical. I tell you what, when I try to do technical cunning, shit never worked, man. There was stuff when I was doing Savat, which is a French kickboxing, and there was moves. I was like, I'm gonna try to get this. We're sparring, and I'm gonna get this move. Never,
Yeah.
ever, ever worked. If I just went with the flow and let stuff just happen, boom, stuff happened. Whether I was doing kickboxing or grappling or self-defense stuff, or full top to bottom, full range sparring, it didn't matter. Or same, if I was using it out in the world when I was bouncing, that desire for victory doesn't really play. And then technical cunning kind of just doesn't work. I'm going to use technique. You just had to be, I guess there's technical skill, I would, but it's skill being applied. I'm not trying to apply a technique. I
The
just happen to apply a movement that fit properly.
To me, two things come to mind with this. The first one is, what what Jerry had always said, right? Of the difference between doing and being. And a lot of times when you're
Absolutely.
in that technical world, then you're trying to do a technique, or you're trying to like hyper fixate on, it's like calling out your own special move in an anime or something, with a Kamehameha or something, just like
Yeah.
in reality that would never work. But interestingly, which some people might also resonate, especially for the people that watch this on my alchemy channel, um, I do this a lot with music production because of how technical and how much engineering is demanding of the genre that I do. And this is like one of the
Hmm.
easiest traps to fall into. It's very difficult, or very easy rather, to wholly fixate. I don't think that's a real sentence, but to entirely fixate
Yeah. We.
on the sounds and the production quality of it, that it becomes very difficult to actually even be able to like write an arrangement.
I think you hit the nail on the head with talking about with what Jerry was saying with the being versus doing, and that technical cunning is a conscious effort to do something.
Mm.
I want to do something, but in a conscious effort instead of being in the moment and reacting with aliveness to your environment and just letting whatever's going to happen and relying on the training that you've already done. Uh, which I think is a common thing in the martial arts world that we come into it. So I think a lot of people will maybe benefit from, at least I think everybody will benefit from at least taking that a moment or two of your own
Mm.
and going through these six diseases and just contemplating what it means to you. Again, I don't know what your answer is going to be, but I think the process will very likely give you some positive results.
I I also think.
Number three, no, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna wrap that one up with. I also do think that there's a time to be a scientist, and then there's a time to be an artist. So there's nothing wrong with labbing something as a drill or as a cultivator, but in the turn or in the means of expression or in the means of problem solving, you kind of have to like let it go and just be in that moment, like we talk about.
Mhm. I had a great dance teacher who put it in a different way of you have to learn that you learn all the steps, but at a certain point you just have to dance.
Yeah,
You've learned all the notes, but at a certain point you just have to play the
you have to
music.
play, right?
You're just doing it. So you know all the punches and kicks and whatever, but at a certain point you just gotta fight. Whatever that's going to be, you just have to. That's the artist, the expression of self in there, and
Right.
allowing that go. And then whatever you're, whether, and that's where sport comes in really great because it just gives you more to play with outside of your own school and test those skills. Hey, what did I learn? Oh shit, I got to go back and work on that. And we're
Right.
going to talk about some other stuff in the next episode, which will come back and you'll have some of these common themes. So I hope everybody is listening today will tune in for the next episode that covers a lot of this really cool stuff. And then also looking at what we just covered in the previous episode um, with stances and people kind of getting rigid. These three things are going to kind of go through a physical and then a philosophical and then a physical again and really kind of helping you go and hopefully jumping whatever your personal martial journey happens to be to jumping that into the next thing.
Mm.
Number three, the desire to display all that has been learned. Again, this is the one that I ran into because I was like, I know fox out, I know this, I know that, and honestly, I it was a bit of me being uh, cocky, arrogant, and I could say some other young, flashy, confident, aggressive. I wanted to. I knew some cool shit, and I wanted to go put it on somebody, and I wanted to show off. I wanted to showboat a little bit. It's like I knew how to do it, and Jerry was intercepting me from taking that into too far,
Yeah.
which is what we've talked about for all this. The idea of understanding these diseases, not that we can avoid them wholly, but so that we just don't take it and run off into the hinter regions of I'm going to show you everything, and people are like, I have no idea what the fuck you were talking about
To
with
your
this move because I don't have the structure, I don't have the developed culture or system to be able to handle this movement.
I will say though, like to your credit, at least in my experience, and I'm not saying that this person is me, but sometimes you get students that just get it. And then you're like, well, what else can I throw at you? Oh, they get that. Oh, they get that. Oh, they get that. And that's kind of hard to shy away from when that scenario happens.
I will say I do understand this, and I do really appreciate that Jerry gave it to me. So it makes me a bit more cautious when I do show things.
Mm,
And one of the ways I'll do it a lot, and I will really tell the students, I say, hey, look, I want you to see what we're doing.
yeah.
I want you to see, okay, great. You've done 1, 2, 3. Now we're gonna go, this is gonna go into 1, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 5.5, 6, which goes back into 2, 7, B triangle. And people are like, what the fuck is, my mind is exploding. Don't worry about it. I just want you to see that that is a possibility. So when you have people who do go, wait a minute, I
Yeah.
I I can do 3 more of those right now today because I just have the natural gifts. They have whatever inclination that they had
Or an aha
where they
moment.
could just pick up movement. They had an aha moment, and
Yeah.
sometimes it may not. That aha moment might not even be for the thing you're showing. It might be for something else you showed 2 months ago,
And that's, I
or
just,
something that has nothing to do with anything that it's not even martial arts. It's like, oh, I was doing something else. And that totally makes sense now. I've actually had that one happen more than a few times where someone was in class and they had an aha moment. It had nothing to do with martial arts. It was something completely different and outside of the school. And it just like, oh, this other thing totally makes sense now. Okay, well,
yeah. And I'm sure that, in Jeet Kune Do specifically is definitely not the only thing that provides this. But I will say that one of my favorite things about Jeet Kune Do is how obvious it becomes and how relative each of these start to show up. When you understand how much everything from a jab cross is related to all of the higher level skills, you just kind of have this moment of like profoundness of like, oh shit. And it just keeps getting deeper and deeper and it keeps giving back. And that's where these get into play, right? And I think that's where all of this stuff starts to really make sense if you do have the training along with the reading.
I think there's something else in there that I run into still. Again, disease number 3 for me. I do see, hey, look, here's jab cross. Well, did you know jab cross is also this? Did you know it's also this? Did you know
Right.
it's also here? Oh, and it's
Same.
also this thing. And it's really not a big deal. It's kind of all, and everybody's like, what?
Mm,
My brain hurts. I can't do it. I do the same thing for like more traditional stuff. If you go, here's a front stance. Well, the front stance is also part of your single leg. It's your side kick. It's a leg sweep. It's you're going into all these other, you're doing an arm break over here, you're doing this, you're doing, it's like, how many different things can you do that a front stance benefits and that structure leads into a ton. I like to hint towards it and allude towards that briefly, and then when I'm teaching,
right.
and then go back into the other structure. So I think part of it is not the showing it, but just going, hey, here's where this stuff goes into. Did you see it? It looks sexy and cool, right? I thought so too. That's for the path you're headed on, because I always felt it was really cool when I was doing something and you saw somebody else take that same thing and do 5 other things with it. You were like, whoa, wait a minute, I need to work this a little bit
Right.
more. And maybe I can do one of those tomorrow, but I know there's the other ones I can work towards. Let's go into number 4, the desire to awe the enemy. Uh, I think for me, this one got really sort of snipped as far as Jeet Kune Do, specifically, and then as a um, martial artist outworking in the world. And I'll go with that one first. Outworking in the world, you're not trying to awe the enemy. So if I've got to restrain some jackass who's pissed off or drunk or on drugs or harassing some woman, or whatever. There's a whole lot of scenarios where people are just dipshits and doing stuff, and that is the quote
Yeah.
unquote enemy. Uh, Shit, I didn't care. I had a job. My job was to restrain them. I didn't need to impress them. I didn't care. I just need you not to fucking move. I will say, awe somebody and mind fuck somebody are not the same thing.
Right.
I have on more than one occasion came in and put someone in a state of like, I would say you could use the word awe, but really just sort of in a thunderstruck kind of mindset. Not because of, just because of the way you kind of like pull shit off and the way you step up and maybe do something. In Jeet Kune Do, the desire to awe the enemy, I think for me, Jerry really helped me go through that. He said, Jeet Kune Do is meant to destroy an enemy totally. There is no
There's
in
no room
between.
for
There is no
awe. Yeah.
discussion. There is no room for awe. There is
Yeah.
no room for anything else. And this is a pretty extreme, and I don't know that most of the other Jeet Kune Do community actually has this outlook. But for me, the way I was taught and the way that I approach it is when we're cultivating, when it's go time, this is the decisions whether or not someone is, I'm going to fight and it is to the death. All of that stuff has already been, the questions have been brought up and the answers have been given, and it's a green light all the way across the board, and you are a full go. Now that is a philosophical and that is a personal, you know, decision process that needs to happen in the given circumstances. You can't just give that, across the board for everybody. I have to go, hey, in this situation, you know, you threatened my 11-year-old daughter to kill her, and I thought that was real. Well, fuck you. I'm going to destroy you. I'll be judged later by a jury of peers, but in this moment, you're dead.
Yeah.
Or at least everything I do from this green light moment for me is to absolutely destroy you. Now, would I work really diligently to avoid that situation? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nobody wants to be in that situation. I don't think any sane, rational person wants to be in that situation.
Right.
But the philosophical training mindset is that once you are in that position, all bets are off. And you're not, that it's not even a concern. The only thing you're doing is committing yourself 100% to the absolute destruction of the target. And they're not even a person at this point. The
They're just,
emotions and
yeah.
sentiment is gone, other than it's just you're putting all of your fiber and being into crushing that individual. That is a very extreme mindset and not something that I think anyone should take very lightly. But the desire to awe the enemy isn't there for me. Um,
That just sounds like
I'm not
ego
going
on
to
a whole
show you.
different level.
Yeah, it's like coming out and I'm going to square off with someone, in the movie kind of shit, and I'm going to throw a
Right.
couple punches in the air, and then I'm going to do a high spinny kick, and I'm going to pose, and
Does that
that's
sound
I'm trying to
familiar?
overawe you. Yeah, there's a lot of people now, and some people will say, hey, well, that was Bruce Lee, and I think to some extent it would have been, but you got to remember most of what you're seeing with Bruce,
It's in the movies.
I'd say half of it is theatrical,
Right.
as 100% Bruce showboating as an actor. And yes, he's using his martial skill as an athlete to showboat and sell some stuff. He's telling a story, 100%. The other half of that is legend and hearsay and what have you, where people are saying this or they're saying that. Because you got to remember, there was a ton of shit where
Right.
people just made shit up, or it was all conspiracy theories. He was killed by this person, that happened, and there's so many people were coming up with their own agendas, and I have no idea what the truth is, to be perfectly honest. Because there you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, I don't really see that one for me. Maybe
Number
for other
five.
people, maybe you run into there where you want to come over and pound on your chest. Oh, I will say, you ever seen those little fucking shitheads? And if you're one of them, fuck you, get off my channel.
What?
You want to pop up and like raise your shirt up to show you like, here's my 6-pack ab. I'm really cool, but I'm not sporting a gun. You want some of that shit? I fucking had these little punk ass motherfuckers do this shit to me when I was working, and I was like, I'm gonna break your fucking head in half, you dumb shit. And I would just start walking towards these motherfuckers, and they would go, "Oh shit," and just leave. It wasn't overawing them, but that whole idea of I'm gonna, "Hey, what's up, man? Yo, I'm tough shit. You know
Yeah.
who I am? Yeah." I did have some of my team do that. I've talked about this where I had a team, they were from Compton. Somebody else tried to overawe them and say, "Yo, I'm from Compton." To which they jumped up in this motherfucker's face and were like, "What corner are you from? Who you run with? What do you know?" Because they were all from there. They knew like they lived there, grew up there, and they were caught, and they were huge, aggressive guys who were close knit and wonderful guys. I loved working with them. They were all really fantastic guys, but they were big and they were strong, and they called bullshit right out. So some guy tried to freaking over, "You know who I am?" They jumped up in his face and said, "Please tell me, because we're gonna rip you apart."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Fuck, I'm out of this." That was hysterical working with those guys most of the time. Number 5, the desire to play the passive role. I don't even really know what the fuck that means. I guess being defensive the whole time. I'm
Maybe
gonna
maybe
sort of
like
play to you.
avoid, like not wanting to engage in it at all, or wanting to hope that things play out, you know?
Look, if you've worked with me or you've listened to me more than once, I am massively aggressive. I my If I'm moving with somebody, I am extreme forward pressure. I am very aggressive in posturing, in pressuring and probing and attacking and assaulting. I am the complete opposite of passive, which I guess I can be passive if I just doing some fucked up tactics, but I think that would kind of go into like technical cunning. But for me, I'm not a very passive person. I don't infighting. When it's like, "Hey, we're gonna move," I'm like,
Right.
my JKD is extremely aggressive.
I mean, maybe perhaps it makes sense just in the mindset of training, you know? I mean, you had always said the first person to go passive is the one that loses. And so perhaps
Mm-hmm.
a matter of hesitance or, doubt, or bringing that into your training or into whatever it is could be something that results into the passivity.
And that could be, sometimes it could be. There's a lot of lessons that I learned, and sometimes now we're talking about this years later, and I'm realizing that, oh, well, I remember that lesson. Jerry
Right.
Poteet was saying, and in case anybody doesn't know who the heck Jerry Poteet is, look him up. He first generation student under Bruce Lee, trained with him not only at the LA Chinatown School, but also in Bruce's backyard. He's part of the group of 5 that trained with Bruce, and where Bruce was really coming through with the energy and trapping that is what I consider to be the energy and trapping of Jeet Kune Do
Yeah.
versus energy and trapping of Wing Chun, and a very massive difference that isn't found or showcased nearly as strongly, about as nicely as I can put it, from those who trained in Seattle or Oakland. They're much more heavily Wing Chun flavored, is another really nice way to say that.
Yeah. Different times too, different eras.
And
So,
different. Well, I mean, yeah. Like, look, they didn't have video. They didn't have YouTube. Like a phone call was expensive to make, let alone like doing a video call or just filming freaking everything.
right.
Or Bruce was, again, he was an actor moving around. But Jerry Poteet was my teacher in Los Angeles, and he had trained with Bruce Lee and then continued to go on and cultivate and refine what he'd been given. One of the things that he did with me was he talked about bowing in. We do a double vertical fist bow, and then you start sparring. And I had a bunch of really great guys that we would bang around with and I'd move with in various places. And mostly at Ed Monahan's School Combative Arts Academy, really great guys there. And I'm gonna tell you what, you don't fucking know any of them, and I'll back them against most people because they can all throw down, been there, done that, um, and have proven themselves, which is how it is for probably most of the schools. The really great, solid people, you don't know who most of them are. You'll see a lot of other people coming up
Yeah.
that are teaching, but are maybe not. They weren't maybe the number one person. They were maybe the number 5 person at that school, but the other people are doing other things. So Jerry said, all right, you do your bow. And then what Ian was talking about earlier, you step forward into them. And then they would step back and you put them into the passive role.
Hmm.
And that may have actually come from when we were talking about the 6 diseases. I don't actually know, but it that obviously that particular, challenge. Hey, Joel, go do this. Okay. Bow, step forward. They were all stepping back from me and they didn't realize it. And they'd taken the passive role. Here's another thing that kind of goes into that. Following. Being careful to make sure you're not the follower. So if you're moving with somebody else, you always want to be the instigator. I'm the leader.
Right.
I move, you follow. I move, you follow. Doesn't matter if I'm going forward or if I'm going forward or dissolving. Doesn't make any difference. I need to be leading. Because if I'm leading, then I'm establishing the rhythm. And if I'm establishing the rhythm, then I can break the rhythm far more easily than my opponent can. So it's a massive tactical advantage to just be in that seat. It's like if you're playing football and you're on offense.
Right.
Hey, can the other team score? 100% they can. They can intercept the ball and run it back for a pick six. You bet. They can do a sack and they can do all that. But you at least have the initiative. You see the same thing with fencing. They'll push and pull, and who has the initiative in fencing? And those are really big. So avoiding being in the following or passive role. There you go. So I do maybe have an opinion on that one.
Yeah.
All right, number 6, and this is our conundrum of a conundrum. This is the don't think about pink elephants. The desire to get rid of whatever disease one is affected by. And I think I actually have a pretty short answer for that one. It's so short, I'm going to close the book and not look at it, take my reading glasses off. With any philosophy, anything that we're doing, any thought-provoking thing, examine it, give it due process, and then let it go.
Yeah.
Move on and get on with living your life. If you're so caught contemplating something, I must contemplate the 6 diseases. I must contemplate the 6 diseases. Disease number 1, and you recite it. Disease number 2, and recite it. You're like,
Get it
if you're
tattooed
going
on
to
your chest.
confession, go to do confession, but don't stay in the confession box, I guess. I'm not Catholic. I don't know how that works. I'm sorry.
Pretty sure it's not like that.
But you don't. But I think that's the whole point. It maybe is that you're supposed to confess and then go on and live your life, and maybe don't do those things again.
Right.
So number 6 is say your confessions. Acknowledge your sins or acknowledge your mistakes, your diseases. We're going in just a philosophical. We're not going into your mortal soul or whatever you want to think.
Right.
This is not a theological station. You're in the wrong channel.
Right.
Maybe.
We have
Or
this...
we're having to drink a whole lot more tea. But yeah, just, contemplate those things, but don't get so caught up on it that you get locked in a loop. And it seems kind of in there. Yeah. I don't know. That's it for me. Ian?
Yeah, I'll close out with this. We have this saying in the producer community. Kenny Beats made it really popular. Don't overthink shit. That's what it means.
Sounds good. Hey, everybody, do give us a like. If you got here, you're probably subscribed. But you know what you can do? Two things you can really do that will help this channel out, help us out tremendously, and ergo help you out. Number one is put comments down there. Let us know what you're thinking about. Let us know, hey, do you have a question? What's some topics you want us to talk about? But the other part of that is tell your friends. You know, if you like this content, I do this all the time with things that I like, whether it's a show or a book or I'm watching something or listening to something, whatever it is. If I like it, I tell all my friends about it. That's what we're asking you. One, tell us what you like about this or what you would like us to explore more of in the comments. And number two, tell your friends all about us. That way more people can hear us and then they can tell us what it wants. And then that will guide us into having more people listening and more people with that input to guide our talking points. So the topics that we're going to discuss.
Yeah.
Unless I just go off on a fucking rant and then you're just like,
Well, I mean,
sit back with your popcorn and
I'm sure there's plenty more
or
of
I
that
guess
to be had.
tea.
Or
Oh,
just
I
tea.
think it likely. Anyway, folks, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this. Please give those comments and tell your friends about it. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.
See ya.